All right, so I just got done walking this property here. This is from the outside. I actually walked inside and went through the courthouse, which you can see there. The courthouse has, I have it all written down here, spa, fitness gym. It has a pool, playground, basketball court, tennis courts, very small putting green. I wasn't really that impressed with the putting green. I think that could actually be improved, like if there were to be maybe like 3 holes or something like that where they could actually come out and play on it. And then they also have a movie theater, which we can see here. But you can see my initial reaction on the property is that is freaking dope. So it's basically like a circular building where it goes around the whole thing. It's 363 units, built in 1993. The only kind of thing I'm not sure about is that it's in Springfield, Missouri, so like the potential there isn't that great. But here's what the rents look like. So it has a high multitude of different rents available. Property manager is TLC. It's on site and they keep it up pretty well. Actually this morning on Saturday they're just like in cutting the grass and stuff. Actually inside the courtyard because right now we're in like complete lockdown or whatever. There's actually no one in there, but they're still keeping it up pretty well. The only really down thing that I have is that parking lot is a little bit tight. They don't have quite as much parking as they probably could. But if we get into the actual numbers, see that there's 363 units on the whole property. Average rent is $1,000. So I'm still getting new to all this, but basically like in a year, 363 units divided or multiplied by 1,000 rents per unit, because that's average, right? We saw that there's a pretty wide variety of different rents available, but on average it'd be about $1,000. And then if we multiply that by 12, we're going to get $4,356,000 that this property has the potential to produce per year. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen because not all units are going to be occupied. You could have some more of the cheaper units occupied, maybe some more of the more expensive units occupied. So that number is really just a wide guesstimation, but it's still a good one to start with. So to figure out NOI off of that, let's say we can keep it 90% occupied. So if we take 9% of that, we got roughly $3.9 million. And then I considered expenses to be at 50% of that gross NOI number after we took out 0.9 for the occupancy. So if we take that, cut it in half, we get $1,906,200. To figure out the cap rate or what I want from this property if I were to purchase it. So let's say we do just all I want in terms of cash flow back to me is only 5%. Then for that we need to pay, because I was trying to figure out what the general price of the property might be. So for that we need to pay $39,204,000 to actually have a shot at purchasing this property. So the farther this goes down, the more expensive it gets, because my thought behind that is if the owner is pulling in 5%, they're going to want more for the property, right? But if they're pulling in, let's say, 9% cash flow, they don't need as much for the property because they're making their money back faster. So that's kind of how that works. And then I just have some notes down here. So I still need to figure out some additional numbers on the deal, but this property is freaking sick. Again, if this wasn't in Springfield, Missouri, where there's not much going on, this would definitely be one where I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm going to buy this and I'm going to pay whatever I need for it. But that's a rundown on one of the properties that I looked at this morning. So here, I'm just going to drive around the building a little bit and try to show you guys what it looks like from the outside. So you can see that there's a separate piece of units over there that is part of the same thing. But the main portion of it is this circular building here. So, and as you can see, they have covered parking for the residents, which is pretty big. That's something to look for, because then there's also extra income from that. And you can see on this side here that they have a little bit different outside, right? So the siding's a little bit different, where it's like that brick, which I actually like this a lot more. And they have this on this side as well as on the other side. So there's really two different types of like outside material that they use. You can see that there's gates around the outside, which is big. And then this should be the front, which this is what you see as soon as you pull up, which is pretty damn dope. Like I said, it's really recognizable, right? It's got Abbey right there on the front, and the gates for the front are going to be right here. So again, nice little entrance to the property. I think it could actually be made better, even if there were to be like a water fountain or something like that, make it look a little bit more inviting. But huge, awesome property with pretty awesome upside. All right, so here is the second deal that I looked at this morning that I really wanted to talk about. I'm sitting outside. This is inside, so there's 3 separate buildings with a courtyard in the middle. It's 72 total units. I don't really like how this looks. There is some potential there with the pool. They've got a fountain in there, which looks pretty cool, but in my opinion, they need to move the fountain up the actual front of the property so that you can see it from the road, where most of the traffic is. Because this is in a great location where it's called the Medical Mile here in Springfield, but over there you can see we have the Meyer Center, we have Bone and Joint Center over there, and then there's more over here which you can't see. You can briefly see one here, and there's also medical stuff on this side as well. So this area isn't going away anytime soon. But for the actual apartments, there's a bunch that could be done with it that I don't think they're actually taking advantage of. Because in this area, or for these apartments, the average rent is actually only $605. That's for 2 bed, 2 bath, and the square footage was right around 890 or maybe 860, one of the two. Either way, it was mid to upper 800s, and they're only charging $605 for rent here with this awesome location that they have, right? So I have some thoughts here. Number one, it's a huge opportunity in terms of there's a real opportunity to actually increase the rents here. But before we think about that, how is it doing right now? I looked at the reviews. There was quite a bit of complaints in terms of the management and being able to handle or service their issues quickly. So you know that even just by improving management, rents could probably go up. Overall, the reviews were still pretty positive, but the one thing that they talked about was management. And if you can get your problems handled quickly, that's I think that's going to be a big potential for, let's say, $25 rent increase just from that. But again, I don't want to get into any, that's kind of all theoretical stuff. Let's see, what else did I have here? Well, I guess one of the biggest things is this is the lowest rented apartment complex in the area, despite having what I think is one of the best locations, right? It's literally right smack dab in the middle of Medical Mile here, and in my opinion, they're just not optimizing. Whoever the owner is simply not optimizing what they could actually do with it. So here's what some of the numbers look like. 72 units with $605 rent. That gives us $43,560 per month. If you multiply that by 12, we get $522,720 per year. But to get the actual real number, right, to get to the NOI, multiply that by 0.9 occupancy, get 470, multiply that by 0.5 for expenses, and we get $235,224 for the NOI for the year. Now, let's say I want to pull out 6%, right, for cash flow, before, like, just for the monthly cash flow before I were to distribute anything at the end of the year that might be surplus, right? That would put us at a $3.9 million price. And there's definitely going to need to be some renovation to the facility. Like I said, if you look outside here, right, that just doesn't look very appealing with the wood there. So I would definitely want to replace that. But outside of that, like, the property itself is maintained fairly well. I didn't walk in there, but just from out here looking in, like, you can tell it's okay. Now, I do think they could use different shrubbery and stuff like that to make it look more inviting. And then, as I said, I'll actually drive around here to the front where we can see why I think moving the water fountain to the front could be beneficial. There's also another set of apartments over here, which these I'm not interested at all in those because they suck. They don't look good at all. That's kind of too big of a renovation for me. This one's actually got some potential to be a pretty cool place. So we'll drive around to the front here, and over there again you can kind of see the surrounding of the area is that there's again just a bunch of medical stuff here. I might be going the wrong way, but whatever. So if we go around to the front, this is the front, so this is where you'd actually enter the building from most of the time, and you can see that the entrance here is not really optimized, right? If they were to put a water fountain there in the front, I think that would be much more ideal, because then it kind of gives the place that inviting look that you're looking for. So over there again you can see some more of the what's in the area, and then this is the other side. So the whole, what I would want to do with this property is, I'll just park here for a second. I'm definitely going the wrong way, but whatever. The biggest thing that I want to do with this property, like I said, well, number one, I want to make sure it cash flows how it is right now. So I would need to know what their actual occupancy is. So if we assume 90%, then it would be. But I would want to improve the actual the look of the outside of the building. Get a different management company. There's another management company in the area that has much better reviews on whatever they do. So I'd want to improve the management company, make the outside look better, move the water fountain to the front, put some different shrubbery up, and I think there's an easy increase of up to, because the area, the Abbey apartments that I did before this one, their average rent was $1,000, right? Maybe a little bit above, maybe a little bit below that, but right around $1,000. This is only $605, but it's literally only a mile away, and it might be in a better location because of where it is in reference to the medical mile. Now, they don't have everything that the Abbey has in the courtyard, right? The Abbey had the spa, they had the golf, they had the basketball court, they had the movie theater, so they don't have any of that, but there's still the potential to increase this minimum of $200 up to $805. A lot in the area are around, let's say, $850. So if we were to make the outside more inviting, make management better, we could probably take this up to $850. So I'm going to do some more work on the numbers with this in terms of the debt and trying to figure out if it actually cash flows right now. But this is a huge opportunity because they're not maximizing the property, and it's not going away because of its location, with all of the different, or with it being in the medical mile. Hospitals aren't going away, and you can see the hospitals are nice, right? It's kind of like tall buildings. It's the tallest buildings in the area. So this kind of little mile here isn't going away, which makes this a huge opportunity. All right, so I wanted to expand a little bit more on the two properties that I covered earlier after I did some more of the math to see if they'd actually make money. And again, this is based upon kind of generalities, but I think right now I'm just learning how to break down deals and see if they're actually profitable, so that when I do get the real numbers, I know what I'm doing. So for the Abbey, which is the big circular place with 363 units, we saw a gross rent multiple of about 4.3 million. So if we multiply that by 0.9 for occupancy, and then multiply that number by 0.6 to cover for expenses. So if we figure 0.4 of that goes towards expenses, that's where I'm getting that 0.6 from. So that leaves us with about 2.3 million for the NOI, which we can see here. So based upon that, and I think this is different from the NOI that I calculated earlier. Earlier I did the expenses a little bit wrong. I took 50%. That's pretty high, especially for this place, which doesn't need a whole lot of work. So this is probably more doable. It might even be able to be lower, but we'll go with this for now. So if we calculate it for a 6 cap, we just take the NOI and we divide that by 0.06, which is the 6 cap, gives us to about $39.2 million for the price. So now if we look at how the deal would actually break down, if we were to see, okay, how much is this going to produce for us in a year? For that deal, if we were going to put down 25%, we would need to put down 9.8 million, which means that we would then need to finance 29.4. So that would be our debt on the deal right here, would be 29.4. And then I figured if we pay down 6% of the debt per year, and that's combined principal plus interest, that puts us at $1.76 million a year in debt, which if we take that away from the NOI that we got earlier up here, remember this is the net operating income of the property over the course of a year. So if we take away the debt, because this has already calculated expenses into it, right? We calculated expenses into the NOI. Now if we go ahead and take away 6% for debt per year, which is this number here, that leaves us at $588,000 per year that this property is going to throw off for income for you. So that leaves it as a 6% return when we consider that the original number that we put down was 9.8 million. So we put down 9.8, and then we get paid $588,000 a year after all expenses and after the debt is paid down as well. So that's at a 6 cap. But then I also went ahead and calculated at a 5 cap, did all the same numbers, and we actually found out that at a 5 cap, it only, or at that point, it would be, you need to buy it for $47 million, right? If this was a 5 cap property, you need to purchase it at $47 million, which then means you'd only get $235,000, which was a 2% cash return. So that kind of sets the number that you can purchase the property at. I would not purchase it at $47 million, right? If that's what they're trying to sell for. Instead, I'd go for 39. Could maybe even go a little bit more than that because this is such a nice property. Like if this threw off 400,000 or whatever, I would be willing to do that. Just kind of depends upon, or that kind of gives you an idea for how to negotiate the deal, or at least that's what I'm looking at right now. So that was the first property. This is the second property here. So this was the one where I said huge opportunity here. That was in the middle of the medical mile. So for this one, let's see, what do we got here? We got a $522,000 as what the total rents would throw off. So to find the NOI, multiply that by 0.9 and then multiply by, let's see, this says 0.5, but I redid it for 0.6 up here. So if this is the expense, right? If we consider 40% for expenses, that leaves us with an NOI of $282,000, which means if we divide that by a 6 cap, that puts the price at roughly $4.7 million for these 72 units that we saw. And that's with them having that $605 rent, which is going to be important because I'm going to look at a little bit later not only what the cash flow would be, but also what the personal or what the potential gain on the actual property could be if it were to be sold. I'm a refinance, and I'm not an expert in the refinancing or anything like that, but this is just kind of, again, looking at numbers. I'm trying to dig into this stuff and figure out what I'm doing. So if it's worth $4.7 million, to put down 25%, you put down roughly 1.2 or $1,176,000, which means you need to finance roughly $3.5 million. So that's, again, what our debt is going to be there, would be the $3.5 million. So then I did the breakdown over here to see, okay, if we don't fix the property at all, if we keep it at the $605 rent with the 72 units, would this deal actually cash flow, right? Because we want to we don't want to assume that we're going to be able to raise the rents in the area. We want to make sure if we were to buy the property and nothing were to happen, is this still going to cash flow for us? So we take the NOI here and we subtract the debt. So we took the 1.2 million roughly multiplied by 6%, which would be the debt, to get this 211,000 number that we have to pay off per year. Took that away from the NOI here, which means we get a yearly return of roughly 70 grand, which would be a 6% return on that 1.2 million or 1.17 million that we put down initially. So same as the other one where we see that 6% return. Now, what I did at that point, and again, the property might not be worth this much. Where are we at here? The property might not be worth the 4.7 million here, which just means that if it's not worth the 4.7 million, then we're going to get a higher return, which means our cash flow would be higher, right? So that could very well be the case. Like if we were to calculate this for, you know, a different cap rate. But then what I did is I went ahead, because I talked about earlier where I thought this could easily be a $200 rent increase. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but I actually think these rents could go up to $700 without even doing anything to the property, right? It like immediately once you were in ownership of it, I think it could immediately go up to $700 in rent without any problem, without doing anything to the property. But let's say, like, I think this could be a property where you take 2 or 3 years, you fix some stuff up, you raise the rents, and then you actually get rid of it for a pretty big return, or you keep it for the cash flow. Either one, kind of depends. But I can go through both here. So if we increase the rent by $200 to $805, this is what we got. So the NOI at that point would be $375,000. Before we saw the NOI of $282. So again, NOI is the net operating income. So we see that the net operating income obviously goes up when we increase the rent. So the value of the property actually goes up. Now, if we take away the same debt, because our debt isn't going to change, even if we increase the rents, right? Debt's not going to change. So now, after taking away the debt, we see that it would produce $163,000 of cash flow per year, whereas before at the $605 rents, it only produced $70. So this more than doubles just by raising the rent $200, which I don't think would be difficult to do at this property, which based upon our $1.17 million that we put down would give us a 13.9% return on our money per year just with the cash flow. Now, I have sell in 3 years here. I didn't really consider how many years it would be, because if we're paying down the debt, this could turn out to be even better, but we'll just roll with it here. Ignore this part here. This was a miscalculation, but the new price based upon the NOI. So again, the NOI or the price is based upon the NOI divided by the 0.06 cap rate, which we figured for. So before we divided the $282,000 NOI by the 0.06 cap rate, we got a $4.7 million property. Now that our NOI has increased to $375,000, if we divide it by that same 0.06 cap rate, we got $6,259,000. So the value of the property has gone from $4.7 million to now $6.2 million by raising the rents $200. Right. So now at that point, okay, if we consider that we're gonna have some of the debt paid down, but let's say just to make it easier, we don't have any of this debt paid down. So if we take this 3.5 million, subtract away from the 6.2 that it would sell for, that's going to put us at roughly $2.7 million profit, when all we did was put down the 1.1 here. And remember, we've already put this down, right? So now we're going to walk away with 2.7 million, which means we more than doubled the money that we put in. On top of, and this doesn't include the actual cash flow that we got, which is the 13.9, or which would be the anywhere from 6 to 13.9%, while we held the property. Now, I think there is some stuff that I'm not considering here for actual property value, like I know the appreciation of the actual property I'm not considering here. I need to look more into that. But if we're just looking at these, like this is why I think this property is such a huge opportunity, which I wrote here, is because I don't think it's hard to increase the rents by $200. And if all we do is put down 1.1, we could easily walk away with this 2.7 in addition to the cash flow that we get while we're actually in the deal.